Hello. So we are live. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're here to discuss something that's very, very important to all of us. We're all supporters of the disclosure initiative that's happening. We're all supporters of these whistleblowers. Um, we're also supporters of people that have had contact either with the phenomena or experiencing trauma associated with the phenomena, and that sometimes does involve PTSD. So I just wanted to make a quick comment. I think that it's clear that an attempt was made to discredit David Rush. We all witnessed his compelling testimony last month to Congress. What I'm most proud to see in the immediate response within the UFO community is unity. I see people coming together. I see a community who's upset. I even see people that normally wouldn't agree coming together to agree that this is a a terrible thing. If it had been a leak of his medical records, not only illegal but highly unethical. Um, with that said, I also think that this is a great opportunity for us to see ourselves as a unit, as a community, people with a common goal. This is an opportunity for us to better understand also what we might be up against, um, and some of the tactics or some of the things that we attacks we may see against people who are going to come forward and be more public or are going to testify to Congress. So I think as a community, let's use this opportunity to support these individuals, support them, and offer a little bit of pushback on their behalf, so they don't have to push back so much. Um, and that's really all that I have to say. But I'm really proud of the immediate response of the community, and I think that this should set a tone for how we respond in the future. That's all I have, Deb.
Well, thank you so much, Corey, for introducing what are some of our concerns and some of the emotional aspects of this, because obviously the issue of PTSD is not something that should be treated in any way as it was. So, actually, before we get into too much of the weeds, I would like to bring CJ, who is a psychologist, about the issue at hand of PTSD, because one of the things that was discussed today was whether or not that would any way discredit what was said. And I'm also going to add Keith to the screen because he's here with us. Dr. Taylor is here with us today.
Hello.
So, yeah, as a clinical psychologist, when I heard about this leak of Mr. Gresh's medical records, I was very concerned. I am very concerned and quite frankly appalled. Um, as a mental health provider, if we are unable to keep private people's most, secret of secrets, their issues, their struggles and their pain, then we're not much good, to society or anyone. So the fact that this has come out, and I'm not entirely certain if this came out as product of a FOIA request or some other police operation or records, but um, it is my understanding that these records are supposed to remain confidential. So I'll not say a whole lot about that, but I would like to focus for a moment on I guess, the apparent argument that's being made that someone who has PTSD can't be truthful, or someone who has PTSD can't be honest or helpful in their dealings, especially in front of Congress. And quite frankly, that is a critical error on whoever's part who's made this argument. Um, I have the pleasure and distinct privilege of working with veterans every day. And a lot of those veterans are currently working on the civilian side as first responders, police officers, the people who secured, a nuclear facility near where I live, Oak Ridge. These are people who safeguard our communities and our country, and they happen to have trauma histories, diagnostically, uh, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I want to be very clear that you know whoever has done this has made a critical error in floating this idea that someone who has trauma can't be trusted. That's so not the case. What I tend to find with post-traumatic stress disorder is that those tend to be the most honest of clients and people, because they have experienced an event that caused them to feel unsafe, right? Or to feel, well, traumatized. And so they tend to be very, very, very honest about their experiences. They tend to be very open, and they will give you more detail because they need someone to understand their suffering and to understand what's going on. So quite frankly, I find it insulting and laughable that there's some equivalence made between someone who has PTSD and someone who can't be truthful. So.
Okay. Thank you. So the reason, in part, we asked Dr. Taylor to come in today was because he is someone who would understand a little bit about what's going on with this claim that the police would just hand over these records. And he and Courtney have today been looking at some of the legal aspects of this. So I would hope that they would both be able to chime in a little bit on some of that.
Absolutely. Courtney, did you want to talk first, or do you want me to?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. I happened to take a look at the article and the public records request that was made by the author of the article. And what is interesting is that he specifically asked for information about any calls for service, any incident history reports, any related police reports for 2 addresses, which I'm sure he looked up Mr. Grush to find out where he lived, and then also requested all records related to David Grush as either a witness, victim, suspect, or 911 complainant on any address between January 1st, 2013 and July 30th, 2023. That is what's key. And by the way, he didn't even spell his name right. But that is the crux of this, because the records that were given to the reporter blacked out the victim and the complainant's names, and it basically talks about the calls the call that was made by his wife to go to that location, and then what transpired, what the officers saw and heard and documented in their reports. So that when the writer of the article says, "Oh, this was just public information and it was publicly requested," it was just made as a normal public's record request, I don't think that should be considered as an innocent public records request when there's a federal investigation for retaliation, a whistleblower retaliation, and this type of activity would fall squarely in line with that kind of harassment. This request was made 4 days after Mr. Grush testified at the hearing, which I was fortunate enough to be in the room when he did. That was a historic day.
And I've noticed today that you have a very somber face, because this is not, anything like your usual demeanor. And obviously this is very upsetting, right? So I wanted to say before I pass it to Courtney that, as a mental health professional, and I'm also appalled, and I cannot understand how someone's mental health in any way would be revealed this way. And I understand that this is a backdoor method, and I think that would have to change. I cannot believe that you could just walk up to someone and be told that someone had psychiatric care. That's just not how that normally works. So, okay, Courtney, can you please chime in on what you found out a little bit about the legal aspects of this?
Yeah, I did some due diligence. My understanding coming at this is as a clinician. And so I've had done, inpatient hospitalizations and involuntary, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. And it's heartbreaking. And I just want to remind everybody, in looking at the facts of what's come out, this is probably the worst day of David Grush's life. And not only is it being dug up in a dirt pile, and being used against him to disparage him. It's very embarrassing. And I think it is the epitome of morallessness that this is being used in an actual story against him. So one of the things I found today as an aside that I wanted to read off to everybody as I was doing the legal work, I felt is very important for us to all reflect on this, what's happening and how it's coming to us and the information, because it's very overwhelming. And this is when I was doing research on the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Act. Championing one side or the other reveals much more about the person making the judgment than it does about David Grush. So that was used in another statement for another whistleblower that you can all go and look about online, but this is really about David Grush. And so one of the things, my takeaways of all of this was we were relaying the facts last night as they were being presented to us at UAP Med Coalition, and we wanted to do crisis management and get a statement out, which we did. And I do feel that there are some solid things that we can stand on in advocacy and political advocacy for David Grush and other experiencers, so this never happens again. And so the whistleblower law that he is testifying under talks about different types of protections that I wanted to remind everybody about. And he actually, in his testimony, is covered by a couple of them. So you can go find the law online. I just read it and downloaded it on my phone, doing some research before I came online. But it's interesting to me that in subsection 5 of HR 3829, the Federal Intelligent Whistleblower Act, risk of reprisals is one of the first one. And the IG did, I think, put that into his comments when he reviewed David Grush's case. So that's one of the things that's very important in that language. He also said his case was an urgent concern and validated that. So my question is, if it was an urgent concern and there were fear of reprisals, why would those records not have been on some level by the intelligence community either sealed, protected, or found? And why was it so easy for the media to access his medical and mental health care records when we as clinicians who are working in the field have to do so much to get medical information through ROI processes? Even a known patient getting their own medical records is very difficult. And they were able to just waltz in and get this. I think that the most interesting thing of all is that the addresses, his multiple addresses in Virginia, were able to be tracked, the hospital where he was, all the specific information, and yet they got his name wrong. So it doesn't add up. It's very suspicious, and I think we need to keep our eye on the ball and keep doing action, political action.
Okay. Corey, what are your thoughts in seeing this happen to this whistleblower and his sensitive personal information just being exposed like this, especially when he should be currently protected by the Whistleblower Act?
Yeah, no, thank you, Deb. As Dr. Taylor mentioned, I also had the fortune of being there in DC that on the 26th when David gave his very brave testimony. Obviously, like I said earlier, obviously it was an attempt to discredit him. What I think is so spectacular about where we are today with mental health is that it didn't, is that it really backfired. And I think a lot of people saw that and they saw themselves and they thought about their own trauma and they thought about how their own mental health probably could be used against them. And people just really jumped on it. But when it comes to mental health and veterans, I am a veteran and I do have PTSD and I've had it for over a decade. I also want to point out that last year, 1.7 million veterans received mental health services from the VA. So this is broad. And if you talk to a lot of veterans, you're not going to have to talk to many before you find somebody who does have PTSD or is dealing with some kind of a past trauma. Again, this validates David Grush. This, if there were questions about who he really was, or if he was, if he wasn't who he said he was, obviously, we have some of his medical information. So this validates David Grush. I would also say that, to Courtney's point, this is something we should take very serious. We should pay a lot of attention to. And we should, as a community, continue to respond to this so that the people that have their eyes set on discrediting whistleblowers, they know that we're going to come after them. They know that we're going to band behind that person, and that we're not going to buy it. So again, just to keep it short, I think it's a great opportunity. The last thing I'll say is that I tell everyone that I have PTSD. I tell everyone, and I think for two reasons. For one reason is that I want to remove the stigma. I'm not afraid to tell you that I have mental health issues. I'm not afraid to tell you why. And number two, whoever I'm talking to, they may be dealing with something, and that may encourage them to go get help for themselves. And I've had the good fortune of experiencing that with a lot of people. So yeah, I hope we just continue to inspire each other and stay focused, and just kind of, band together. I look at all of this from a PR perspective as opposed to a legal or even a medical perspective. But yeah, we have to protect the whistleblowers. We have to advocate that that they have some kind of legal protection, that their medical records are protected. And we should hold the politicians who are helping us with disclosure, who have decided to, put their names behind people like David Rush. They're just as much involved as all of us are, even more so. But my point there is that they should have some kind of action. And Congressman Burchett put out a statement last night talking about how this was really like a desperate attempt. And, I think most of us would agree that's exactly what it was. It was a desperate attempt. So, a lot of places we could go here, but I think this is overall a positive thing for the community and in the long run, my opinion.
I have to ask CJ on this one. CJ, knowing what you know about PTSD, do you think this could have some significant ramifications for someone who's suffering from PTSD to have his personal stuff forced out into the public?
Yeah, absolutely. It's already really, really hard to get because of stigma, whether it be a civilian or, a veteran. It's really hard to get someone in the chair, to sit down, talk, and process and work through their trauma. So my concern is how many people, are going to see this and say, yep, see, that's what happens when you try to be honest and you try to be open about, a part of your life, you're going to be punished. And so, we lose, I think the current number is about 22 veterans a day, to suicide. That's not just because of the trauma they've gone through or the mental health challenges they have. It's because on the other side of the table, there are underhanded tactics like this, a lack of funding, just people not wanting to acknowledge that veterans have been through a lot. And we as a country owe it to them to give them the best possible care that we can and the best possible treatment. This is not it. This is not anywhere near where it needs to be in the case of Mr. Grush. So I'm worried that other veterans or other folks who are suffering are going to see this and so they're not going to get help. And that's just a tremendous amount of suffering that just, it really troubles me. I'm not going to sleep good tonight.
Well, I'm just going to remind anyone who's listening who happens to be a veteran or someone who's suffering from PTSD that there are resources out there, included Wounded Warrior. The Wounded Warrior Project is designated to help veterans. And Keith, I imagine police officers also suffer from PTSD. Do you want to speak on PTSD from that perspective?
Absolutely. As a result of being a first responder, 9/11, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And for the police community, there was a lot of stigma around admitting that you suffer from mental trauma. And it was reflected in department policy and culture that if someone were to get help for a mental health issue, then they would suffer the consequences, formal and informal sanctions to their careers, to their lives as a result of seeking help. And I think 9/11 helped change that. It forced a change in culture for at least the department I worked for to realize the importance of officers being able to get mental health treatment just as they would any other type of treatment needed for their well-being. And so from a law enforcement perspective, I think it's really critical that the stigma be addressed up front, like Mr. Grush did in his testimony and by his actions, in terms of being courageous and reporting what he knew to the Inspector General's, the Intelligence Community Inspector General's office. And I want to just make a note that this is an ongoing investigation, these retaliation efforts by powerful people in the classified community, I would presume, whether they work for government or they work for private industry. And we aren't, the public isn't really allowed to get updates on this investigation because it's ongoing, and it may be a quite large investigation in terms of how far-reaching it goes and who's involved. And so an incident like this may not seem to be getting some sort of real loud attention from people in authority, but I would tend to think that it is being considered quite carefully and investigated for the retaliation aspect of it. And so and same thing with Congress. They probably know a lot more than the general public because they've been dealing with this for a number of years. And they also understand the importance of radio silence when you've got an ongoing investigation that you do not want to jeopardize by talking prematurely to the general public about persons, places, and things. It's a very, very sensitive thing. It's a classified environment they're talking about.
Right, which obviously was completely violated by this, right? This was a violation of that. There was no sense of, secrecy, protection. It's pretty appalling. I was impressed that David Grush put out a statement pretty quickly, and he was pretty honest, but he was forced to be transparent about something very personal, and I find that very upsetting. I know, Courtney, you had pressed in the press release, no pun intended, for people to investigate what happened. And I just wanted to give you a chance to speak about what Congress should be doing in response to this a little bit more. What should our, elected officials be doing to protect David Grush right now?
Well, I think we all need to stay very compassionate and know that his life is never going to be the same again. I mean, through the fact that his information and his health information has been leaked, but also his testimony and being under fire the way he is, it's just, it's so disheartening. So when I get disheartened, I tend to get tactical. So my response is to try to create a movement, and there is a movement, and people are interested with the hearing, with what's going on right now, with the smear tactics, and I disagree to some level with Tim Burchett that it was a desperate attempt. I actually think it was probably a well-coordinated attempt. And I do feel like I get reports individually from experiencers who have the same thing. They might not be veterans, but these might just be individuals who have seen something or experienced the phenomenon, and they feel on some level that they are afraid not only because of stigmatization, but also because of that thing that's there that David Grush is actually experiencing right now, very personally. So I do think we need to keep our eye as a watchdog group almost when experiencers are reporting to us this kind of activity, that they're undergoing personal attacks, or they're feeling like there might even be three-letter agencies involved in their lives directly. I sent out the experiencer assistance sheet to a couple groups to have people give feedback, and that was one of their pieces of feedback, that the experiencers do face retaliation, and it's important for us to continue that ongoing research. With that being said, the tactical piece is, from my experience working in mental health lobbying for housing and homelessness, we were really successful in Seattle, Washington. And we used a national effort and a local effort to move certain bills to get our funding passed for our housing projects, for our groups of folks in our supported housing programs. So what I'm trying to do is educate people, educate groups, educate council, educate different types of advocacy groups about how we can get united together and kind of mobilize together. And that's no easy thing. We do need to be highly organized. We do need to be communicative, and we need to reach across to one another, especially now more than ever. So call for congressional meetings. It's very important to put not only UAP Med as an organization in front of these individuals to talk about the statistics, to talk about the prevalence and what experiencers are going through in terms of medical effects, but a wide range of issues. So that would be my top recommendation, is for people to start getting organized locally, but also that we tie together into a national effort. That needs to happen.
I'm glad that you brought up experiencers. Obviously, experiencers have been dealing with stigma for decades. It's very difficult for them, and that's why we have UAP Medical Coalition. It's very difficult for them to, as CJ said, reach across the table to get the assistance they need for the actual issue that's plaguing them. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I know that there is an indication that Grush is also an experiencer, but he has not been public so much about that, right? And we have other people who are working very hard on this issue who have also been experiencers. There's even people who are in the debunker camp who have been experiencers. The community should in some way have, in my opinion, compassion towards each other on that front alone. You've had an anomalous experience. Where's the support? What can we do to help support each other? How can we advocate for each other? How can we set aside some differences and be good to each other? So I just want to give you guys a few minutes to give some advice for how we can help each other and help David Grush right now, because he's, part of our group. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. One of the things that I think is really important is that more individuals come out, people who are respected in their professions, credible messengers, to talk about the UAP issue. I saw recently where Admiral Gallaudet did an interview where he talked about this biggest story in human history, and nobody's responding to the reality of UAP. And in my profession, law enforcement profession, I'm very concerned that there has been no movement, nothing from police leadership, nothing regarding equipment, training, or policies that could guide law enforcement officers as they have to deal with this very real thing now that it's being acknowledged. And so there's work to do. And as we have more credible messengers saying that in their own disciplines, we'll start to break away at this stigma that does not allow individuals to deal with reality, frankly.
Imagine a world where we didn't have stigma about mental health. Imagine a world where we didn't have stigma about anomalous experiences. That would be a great world, right? Where people could just share with each other and be honest with each other. And by the way, just on a personal note, if someone who had a severe mental health diagnosis told me that a building was on fire, you better bet I'd go check. So whatever is going on right now, it doesn't matter. Still, they need to go investigate. It's ridiculous. Like the whole thing is ridiculous. So who else wants to talk about how we can kind of help each other and unite right now?
I just go really quickly. I love what Courtney said, talking about like mobilization across different sections of the UFO community, different healthcare organizations, people that are trying to be involved, just to have some level of communication across our collective efforts. It serves us all well to, I think, to see ourselves as a unit. We have a collective goal. We want UFO disclosure, but we understand the importance of protecting people who have these compelling testimonies, who are brave enough to come forward and share them. So also, I think the accountability from the political perspective, Deb, you bring up a really good point. Yeah, what is the political response? There should be a response. I think more so than just a statement. They should investigate it. I think also that should, from a political standpoint, show that the politicians, just as much as the UFO community is rallying behind Rush, with this, to show that the politicians are just as much as they are serious about disclosure, they're serious about protecting people who are here to give us disclosure. And going back to stigma, I absolutely agree. I think the more that we talk about some of these things, as uncomfortable as they may be, we all find that everyone's dealing with a little bit of trauma. Everyone has something going on. They may not have been diagnosed, but if you talk to a person long enough, they've been traumatized by something. Their career, their childhood, the phenomena. And for me as a person, when I get that far with somebody, now we're really talking. Now we're having a real conversation, and we're being open and we're being honest. So I think let's continue to be open. Let's continue to be honest with each other, and let's continue to have integrity and support those that are coming forward with information that we don't have. They have it, and we want to make sure that they have that support for it to be a record.
Yep, absolutely. CJ, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think that my takeaway from this is that for whatever reasons, whatever motives were behind this, I'm not prone to conspiracy thinking, but it sure does make me wonder. But whatever the motive, I think the key thing that they wanted was to fracture the community or to create some sort of distraction about what's really going on. I would encourage people to just have the conversation with their mental health providers in their communities, in their clinics, people they work with, whatever, and really connect across, whether it be a cultural divide or a sociological divide or whatever, to acknowledge that as human beings, all of us have had some level of trauma. I mean, y'all remember COVID, right? Mm-hmm. The social isolation, the hurt, the death toll. I mean, just all of that. Every human being on this planet can connect on some level about trauma. That's what this is about. And this is about having respect for another fellow human being. So I would encourage us to just have those conversations and realize that we're not so easily divided.
Courtney, did you want to add some more about how to help the community right now, and also to nudge those politicians to help maybe too? Because I know we keep talking about that, but I'm so chagrined right now that they keep leaving experiencers on the back burner while they're talking about UAPs. But go ahead, Courtney.
Well, like my mom always says about the Yankees, there's good news and there's bad news. So the good news is there are people who are very dedicated to shining a light on this issue, and we all just came a lot closer. And so if I have anything to offer, it would be to ask ourselves really deeply, as experiencers, as advocates, as therapists, as professionals, law enforcement, whoever you are, what do we want? What do you personally want? Why are you watching this? Why are you in this? Maybe you've experiencing something yourself. And so deeply reflect, like I do, what is it that I'm in this for and how can I help? I'm very service oriented myself. And here's the reason why. I have a very good friend, and he is a lifelong experiencer. He's a doctor, and he's just basically been in the shadows for a really long time. And he's not in the movement because he's been harassed by the FBI, the CIA, multiple agencies. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist either, but I know the real deal when I see it. And Naomi Klein wrote The Shock Doctrine, and that is legitimate and it's factual. And so we know that there are tactics that are used against people, especially experiencers. So when I'm reflecting on this specific question of what can I do, what do I want to see, it's really to see this whole paradigm change and shift. And we can be a part of that together as a community, to live in a world where experiencers are not stigmatized. And it's been mentioned, and that can happen in our lifetime if we make it so. I worked in a time when we didn't have supportive housing for people who were unhoused in Seattle, and we created it, and people told us we couldn't do it. And we did it with a very, very, very strong community action. And so this is community action, but it's national action as well. And we can do it. So that's the good news. We can do it. We can do it together.
Thank you so much. Everyone, I'm really proud of what we're doing as a group. Not only do we reach our hand out to other groups because we're a coalition, but we really offer people a chance to voice what's going on. And we also shine a light on some things that other people may have missed. Let's just put it that way, right? The issue of stigma is so far beyond what we've even touched upon today. It goes into people losing their jobs, people losing their families, people having their careers destroyed. So even some really bizarre things like medical things being done to them. Supposedly, there's been some people who have been put under hypnosis because they said they had an experience. Yes, I know. I see your reaction, CJ. But yes, some people have told me because they had an experience, they were also interrogated for 8 hours or something. So one day we're going to shine a big light on all of that. And I hope that the people watching this are paying attention to what we're trying to show them and educate them about. And that those who want to help come forward because we can use all the help we can get. So I'm going to let everyone do just last thoughts and then we'll wrap up. So we can do the same order as before if you like. Go ahead, Keith. You were
Sure.
first last time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'd like to see as this process takes place is a responsible, rational way of getting government to start taking information in that individuals have as they go through everything from sightings or observations to experiences or abductions. That should be part of official government tracking, so it can be, the scientists have accurate data that they can use, and it will be national in scope, and it will be homogeneous in nature, and we won't have to have such a poor understanding of the frequency of the anomalous phenomena incidents with humans, and to that fact, it's not only that we don't know how many incidents occur, the stigma also reduces greatly the number of people who will report. So once the government does have some sort of official reporting process, it's still going to take a while for people to feel they'll trust that it's okay to do so, to report these things. So we have a way to go, but I'm confident that we're heading in the right direction. Let's look at the next few months, few years, in terms of this process, and let's see how our government responds. So.
Yeah, that was great, Keith. In closing, I'll say we've actually come a long way as a community. The UFO community has been in existence since the late 1940s, and there's been people who have advocated, people just like us, who have tried to do what happened in July. They've been trying to do this for 60 to 70 years. And the responsibility has fallen on us. It's in our laps now. It's our generation that has this responsibility. So I think let's continue to carry that torch forward and understand the importance of what we're trying to do, and not get sidelined. And I think we're on the right track, to Keith's point. And thank you so much for inviting me, Deb. And it's really been wonderful listening and talking to Courtney, CJ. I know all you wonderful people, and you're so professional and you're so compassionate. And it's a pleasure to work with you all and to have this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. I think you're up next, CJ.
Media darling that I am. I'm just mad as hell on behalf of David Grush and other people who have had these sorts of experiences. And as a mental health professional whose job is to stand up for people who don't have a voice or who were being treated unfairly, I'm not going to stand for it. So that, again, whoever did this made a critical error and clearly didn't read the DSM-5 TR, because trauma does not necessarily mean that someone is not trustworthy. So that's my catchphrase now. Get it on a t-shirt.
CJ, I was going to say, in your clinic, you haven't seen that after a stressful incident or a traumatic, that your clients come in and just become complete liars all of a sudden?
No, 20 years of work, even doing, crisis work, inpatient stuff, never, not one time. No, they should have picked a different diagnosis. So whoever did this was an idiot.
That's exactly where I'm going. Is I've never associated anxiety, depression, or PTSD with going to Congress and lying about crash programs, UFO crash programs. So it's a little absurd.
Final thoughts, Courtney?
I'm going to use a line from my favorite movie, and I know you guys are going to laugh at me, but it's Rogue One. I think it's the best Star Wars movie of all time. But I really like Jyn Erso a lot, especially the scene where she's in the actual Rogue One landing, and she says, "One man with a sharp stick can take the day. They have no idea we're coming. They have no idea. You take the first chance, you take the second chance, you take the third chance." And I think that that's where we're at. And we need to elevate that conversation. This, wide community at large has no idea we're coming, and the conversation we're about to bring, and the elevatedness and the escalation that's about to happen. So we take the first chance, we take the second, and we take the third, and we just keep going until we elevate that conversation the way we want it to take shape. And I believe that it's a powerful statement on grassroots and organization. And once again, I believe that we can do it. And we have a lot of great people in this community. And I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful for all the people that have come before, and the citizen hearings and all the work that's been done, and the veterans who have brought this issue to the forefront. And we're reaping all the benefits of that. And now we can get to move on the shoulders of giants and be Jyn Erso and take it to the next level.
Yes, as someone who likes to research, I'm appreciative of 80 years of research being done, at least on this subject. 80 years of cases where individuals have experienced burns, psychological effects, and a whole lot more. 80 years. So I'm just going to also comment as one of my final thoughts is I'm the community is paying attention to those who are gloating right now about someone's mental health. The community is paying attention, and we are also repulsed by your behavior. We, as a community, may have a lot of differing opinions about what the anomalous is, but as a community, we share some compassion. And for those who are not being compassionate right now, it's disgusting. It's really, truly disgusting. They need to take some mental health courses, learn some things about what mental health is. I am very proud of anyone who seeks mental health assistance. It's a great thing, and I tell people all the time that, in my opinion, it's brain health, right? So it's something we should all be trying to take care of our brain. It's kind of an important organ, right? So I'm always proud of people who want to have the best, experience in their life and the best physical state of being, and the mental health is part of that. The brain health is part of that. So I'm proud of David Grush for speaking up and trying to be transparent, even though he was sort of forced into that position. So I'm hoping that he will model that for some other people who are sharing this experience with him as he is going through it. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone who came here today, and I wanted to say thank you to Julie in the chat. She has been our moderator today. She's always there supporting us every Saturday. So she gets a lot of credit for that. She's awesome. There's so many other people who are a part of the UAP Medical Coalition that aren't here on this panel today, that are doing amazing work. And again, for anyone watching, if you want to help, I'm sure there's a way that you can. So feel free to reach out to one of us. Okay. Everyone want to say goodbye? Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
For everyone listening. Bye.